Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. For joining us. While this Facebook Live is focused on the city's response to the coronavirus and our reopening, I want to begin by addressing the murder of George Floyd and the worldwide outrage it caused. Mr. Floyd was suffocated by the knee of an officer and by the failings of a system that was supposed to protect him. Protests across the world have amplified the cause for justice. And while I do not support disbanding the police, I believe now is the time to make significant policy and funding changes. We must work to ensure that every single tax dollar we spend is used to best protect and invest in our community. When we think about public safety, we can use the peer model: prevention, intervention, enforcement, and reentry. And we need to make sure that resources are being invested in each area in an equitable manner, not just in enforcement. Right now, as millions across the globe are making sure their voices are heard, we have to seize this moment and go from protests to policy changes. Now, we've also had calls and discussions about Confederate monuments. There is one located in the city of Newport News in front of the old Ward Courthouse in Denby. The monument, while owned by the city, is under a state easement agreement through the Department of Historic Resources. The agreement requires the city to obtain permission from the State Board of Historic Resources before making any changes on the site. We are petitioning the Department of Historic Resources to consider the city's request for the possible removal or relocation of the monument. Once the city receives that determination, the city will follow the amendments of the state code governing memorials of war veterans that will take effect on July 1 of this year. In light of recent demonstrations that resulted in injuries, and in an effort to protect the safety of the public, as well as avoid destruction of the monument, the decision was made to temporarily cover the statue until disposition of the monument can be determined by the City Council. The decision was made in consultation with the city manager and the police chief in the best interests of the safety and well-being of our citizens. And as we deal with the national crisis, we are still struggling with a global pandemic. Over the past few months, we've stayed apart and at home to protect ourselves and those we love from the coronavirus. As we begin to safely and strategically reopen, we must remain vigilant in our safety practices. We also need to be patient and kind to one another, as society has changed and we must now do things differently. We are here tonight to share information and answer your questions. I'm joined by City Manager Cindy Roth, Assistant City Manager Alan Archer, and Dr. Steve Julian. We will each provide a brief update and then respond to your questions. We've come a long way since March, when life as we knew it completely changed due to the coronavirus. While the number of active cases has decreased, we can't forget that over 1,500 people in Virginia have died due to this horrific virus. We introduced you to Dr. Steve Julian during the first Facebook Live event in March. At that time, he was the acting director of the Peninsula Health District. He retired from that role effective yesterday, but he graciously agreed to join us this evening to provide an update. Dr. Julian.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As the Mayor says, we have come quite a long ways together since March of this year. We have more testing availability, we have better guidelines, and we are reopening our society. As we do that, I want to caution everyone that we do not want to lose the great progress that we have made. Masking, social distancing, washing your hands, all of those still apply. It's very important at this time that we look out for each other. It is very important that we do use masks in public. It is very important that we keep in mind that this virus is still out there, it is still deadly, and we have not totally defeated it yet. But we will over time, and we will do this together. I really appreciate the cooperation and outpouring of concern that everyone has shown towards each other in doing the things that have been very difficult to do to mitigate the spread of this virus. So thank you to everyone for having shown concern for each other as we move forward. That'll end my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Julian, for that update. And on behalf of the City of Newport News, as well as other cities and counties on the peninsula, it is my pleasure to thank you for your exceptional job you have done at the Peninsula Health District. Your leadership guided us through challenging times. And thank you for your tireless efforts and advocacy. You will truly be missed.
Thank you.
Dr. Natalie Duamina, is the new director of the Peninsula Health District, and we look forward to having her join us for future events. We all want things to reopen and for the life to get back to normal, but we have to make sure we reopen safely. Just like you've had to change your lives, the city has had to make some changes also. Newport News City facilities and offices have been closed to the public since March the 14th. Our city manager, Cindy Roth, will now provide an update on the city. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor said, I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the city's operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as has been mentioned, the city buildings have been closed and city facilities have been closed to the public since mid-March. But however, I do want to stress, and hopefully you've noticed, that while our buildings have been closed, our operations and the provision of services to our citizens has continued. And I just want to continuously note how pleased and proud that I am personally about the way all of our employees rose to the challenge during this health crisis. They continuously found new and innovative ways to do business and to get things done. We maximized technology and been creative in how we were doing things. We did have some obstacles and we did have some other challenges, but overall, I'm very pleased that we were able to deliver the services that all of our citizens need and require on a day-to-day basis. and so that they could continue with their day-to-day lives. So now we are almost a week in to the phase 2 of our planning and recovery efforts, and I am extremely pleased to announce that as of Tuesday, on June 16th, we will be reopening city buildings and facilities to the public. It's been 3 months, and I don't know about anybody else, but it has been a long 3 months. So with the opening, we have to note again that due to the current circumstances, things may look and feel a little bit different. We may not be able to offer all the same services or the programs that we have been offering, but it will take some time, and some things will need to be phased in. But regardless, I can't stress enough, as we reopen, the health and wellness of our citizens and our employees will continue to be paramount and given consideration as we reopen. We'll still have some employees teleworking. We'll start doing block schedules, staggered work schedules, so that people are coming in and out. People are going to see funny little signs in the elevators. We have plexiglass to try and keep the employees as well as the citizens safe when they are coming into City Hall. And we will ask the citizens, when possible and feasible, please continue to use the services online. We think we've provided good service online, as well as when we've had to go out and reach out to the public. So we ask you to please continue that if you are comfortable with that. And I believe in terms of the reopening that Assistant City Manager Alan Archer is going to talk a little bit in more specifics. But before I pass it back to the mayor and on to Alan, I just want to mention a couple of programs that Council was very supportive of and asked us to implement. One being the program for what we called our Small Business Resiliency Grant Program. And what that was is City Council, in conjunction with the EDA, our Economic Development Authority, provided $500,000 for us to do one-time grants to small businesses that were seeing and facing financial hardships from COVID-19. Just a little update on that. We did receive 261 applications. To date, 89 have been approved. 58 are still under review. And of the $500,000, over $412,000 has been provided already to the businesses in the community. And we fully anticipate spending the rest of that money. Unfortunately, we received over $1.3 million in requests. So that tells us something. There is a need out there, and the city has received $15.6 million as part of the CARES program to use to address some of the effects in the community from COVID-19. So we will be recommending over the course of the next few weeks to City Council a phase 2 of a business program, but we do anticipate expanding that a little bit and maybe picking up some of the businesses that we couldn't pick up and maybe changing the regulations a little bit, so that we can also get some additional businesses that didn't qualify the last time around. And lastly, I just want to mention that City Council was very supportive of the City Treasurer, Marty Eubanks' efforts to offer a program that basically gave the opportunity in our residents for them to, and businesses to, particularly those that were facing hardships as part of COVID-19, to be able to enter into a payment program for their real estate and personal property taxes and extend the deadline for payment of those taxes from June 5th to August 5th. So what that allows them to do to have additional time with no additional fees, penalties, or interest. So we were extremely pleased that the treasurer worked so closely with the City Council to make that program available. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a lot of other things that probably could be highlighted, but I think I maybe have gone over my 3 minutes already, but they expected that. So.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm extremely proud to say that even though our city buildings have been closed to the public, we have continued to provide essential services our residents depend on. Our dedicated team has been extremely creative in their efforts to ensure our city has continued to operate. To every city employee out there watching, thank you. And to our residents, thank you for your patience and understanding. Now, Alan is going to share more about resources that are available to residents and some specifics on the city's reopening. Alan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everybody. As the city manager and the mayor have discussed, the city administration formed a recovery planning team to establish the Forward Newport News Recovery Plan. This plan is a practical process, we believe, for reopening city services, programs, and facilities that have been closed or inaccessible due to COVID-19. The plan includes policies related to access and interaction with the public so that you can feel safe if you have a need to come to any of our city facilities. It also addresses personal protective equipment needed for staff and the public. And facility modifications, as the city manager mentioned earlier, have been made to facilitate the public and employees once facilities are open. As a result, city staff have installed plexiglass shielding and social distancing floor markers in all reception areas and elevators, and preventative COVID-19 signage was installed in all of our common areas. Additionally, health screenings are provided to employees at entrances to city facilities, which include temperature checks and symptom screenings, and staff received instructions to wear face coverings in all city facilities. By the way, the public is required to wear face masks in city facilities to include the court facilities as well. If you do not have one, we will provide one for you to conduct your necessary business. As previously discussed as well, all city facilities will reopen on June the 16th. This has been a challenging pursuit, and again, we've had excellent support from our organization and from citizens in the city of Newport News who have been very patient throughout this entire process, and for that we are grateful. However, you are encouraged to check the complete list of services on the city's webpage at Newport News at nnva.gov. And as previously mentioned, we encourage everyone to conduct as much business as possible by telephone, email, or interface with our many electronic applications on the city's webpage. Social distancing, teleworking, and continuing to maintain safe and effective preventative measures are still the safest path for you moving forward as we move into phase 2 prior to total reopening in the governor's phase 3 plan, which we have not achieved yet. And remember, don't forget, you can always contact our 311 Citizen Contact Center. It is available Monday through Friday to answer your general questions, and you may call them at area code 757-933-2311. We've talked in the past about some of the very important public safety precautions that not only this community, but communities across the peninsula, with the help of the Virginia Department of Health, with the collaboration of many of the chief administrative officials across this peninsula, have supported to see us through this pandemic. And I just wanted to take a minute or two to talk about some other interesting items related to how we are preparing to move forward as we continue to work through this pandemic. If you don't know, located in the city of Newport News is one of 6 Battelle Critical Care decontamination units for personal protective equipment across the state of Virginia. Personal protective equipment, as you know, has been at the heart of this battle from the very beginning, and we're so pleased to have this facility in our community. The decontamination unit began operation on May the 11th and will remain in place for a minimum of 90 days and potentially longer based on needs across the state for the sanitization and reuse of personal protective equipment, or PPE. The operation provides needed personal protective equipment to our first responders to also include hospital systems on the Virginia Peninsula. I'm happy to announce that we have some upcoming community test dates that I would like to share with you this evening. To help public health officials contain the spread of COVID-19 in overlooked, undertested, underserved, and uninsured communities. You've heard a lot about the data samples as you have listened to many of the governor's press conferences as he has talked about this need within all of our communities here in Virginia. As we begin to address this community testing opportunity for these particular populations, Centera Healthcare is offering free testing in Newport News. Testing is only for individuals experiencing at least one COVID-19 symptom, living or working in a group setting, or an essential worker at high risk for exposure. Testing will occur on June 15th from 9 to noon at New Beach Grove, which is located at 361 Beachmont Drive, and on June 16th from 11 until 3 at Ivy Baptist Church, which is located at 50 Maple Avenue. Testing is limited on a first-come, first-served basis. Tents and tables will be set up. Participants can choose between a drive-through option or a walk-up option. Social distancing requirements need to be followed at all times. The testing is completely free and confidential, and Centera healthcare staff perform all nasal swab testing done on site. They will call all residents with their results, both negative and positive, within 72 hours of test collection. I also want to address another threat that is looming in addition to the current pandemic that we are experiencing. I want to remind everyone to please prepare for the hurricane season, which we are now in. The National Weather Service predicts an above normal 2020 Atlantic hurricane season with 13 to 19 named storms. As you know, the season began on June 1st and ends on November 30th. 3 to 6 major hurricanes are expected to become a Category 3, 4, or 5 storm event with winds of 111 miles an hour or higher. So residents on the Virginia Peninsula should always be prepared for hurricane season. Essential items to include are a bag of clothing, medicine, written information about health conditions, and contact information of a relative or friend in case of emergency. What you also need to consider this hurricane season is be sure to bring the precautions that are necessary to protect yourself from the spread of COVID-19. Once you arrive at a hurricane shelter for the general public, protective measures should be taken to include wearing a face covering, washing or cleaning your hands, and bringing disinfectant wipes to clean your personal items. So please stop and take time to prepare for hurricane season. I'm happy to say that all of our services are coming back online, to include the library, the Parks and Recreation Department with the many programs and offerings that they provide, from Huntington Park tennis courts to our youth programs. They will open at Brittingham Midtown Community Center, Denby Community Center, Greenwood Elementary School, and Watkins Elementary School to registered participants, Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. Parks, disc golf, archery, the skate park, community gardens are open. The Fido Dog Park is open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Fishing piers have opened at both Hilton, Denby, the Monitor Merrimack, and King Lincoln Park Wave Screen, Leeward Marina, and many others. All of these will be available for you to review on the city's main webpage. This is also a difficult time for those of you who may be looking for childcare, so I do want to take just a minute to remind everyone that there are currently over 40 childcare facilities open in the city. Individuals seeking childcare can contact Child Care Aware Referral Hotline, and that referral hotline number is 866-543-7852, or visit the webpage at virginiachildcare.com for a list of options available in your area. And I'm also pleased to announce that the Four Oaks Day Service Center for the Homeless will reopen as well. And finally, people in need of food assistance are encouraged to reach out to the Virginia Peninsula Food Bank. They have an extensive list of partners and food distribution sites on their website, as well as a listing of upcoming food drives. The website is hrfoodbank.org, and their phone number is 596-7188. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. And to reiterate what Alan said, please go to the city website to see what's open and also to access our online resources. And before we get to your questions, I want to address our schools. I know many of you have questions about school and your child's education. We won't be addressing those questions this evening. We have hosted Newport News Public Schools here at NNTV several times for their own Facebook Live and have invited them to come back soon to discuss the next school year. But before we get to next year, we need to send this one off in style. Congratulations began on Monday. Graduations begin on Monday. And now I know many of you are disappointed because your graduation isn't taking place like you imagined. Now, I've been in your shoes. My college graduation ceremony was also canceled, so I didn't get to walk across the stage to the cheers of my family and friends either. I can relate to you. But don't let your disappointment take away from your sense of accomplishment. Celebrate your achievements and success. The school division has planned some nice festivities to honor our Newport News graduates, and the city has a few surprises also. We know the sky's the limit for each of you, so on Saturday, we want you to look up for a special message. A plane will travel from one end of the city to the other between noon and 2 p.m., carrying a banner just for our grads. And we want you to still be able to take some memorable photos. So tomorrow, we are putting up class of 2020 signs in 3 parts of the city. Now, we don't want you to just take pictures. We want you to see and share our pictures. So tag us using hashtag NN Class of 2020. That's hashtag NN Class of 2020. And finally, check your email inboxes tomorrow for a special edition of Newport News Now. It will contain a special message and the details on where the signs are located in the city. Congratulations to all of our graduates. Now let's get to your questions. Sarah Bowman is going to ask the panel the questions you have been posting, as well as several of you have been emailing to us. Sarah?
This first question is for Dr. Julian. Are you helping our funeral homes gain access to necessary PPE, as they are often just as exposed as our healthcare workers in hospitals, but are not being seen as frontline?
Yes, we are. There is a mechanism for them to obtain assistance with obtaining PPE or whatever questions they have. They can call our hotline at 594-7069, and our team will assist them.
And for Cindy, is the city hosting a 4th of July event or any events this summer?
Unfortunately, we will not be hosting the July 4th event as our citizens are used to with the big crowd and the fireworks. But as the mayor indicated for our graduates, we do have some things in mind and some surprises to help us and across the city celebrate July 4th. So I believe it'll either, if it isn't already, it'll be on the website. And I believe I saw a little article in the paper today that was providing some of the details. But we'll give citizens the opportunity to pick up some lights, some signs, and we are going to try to light up Newport News in some form or fashion throughout our neighborhoods to recognize July 4th. So while it won't be what we're used to, who knows, we might think it's just as good. So thank you.
That sounds great. Dr. Julian, if I'm wearing a face covering, do I still need to practice social distancing?
Yes. There's really 4 measures: wearing a face mask, social distancing, washing your hands. All of these things that we have talked about, the face masks do not eliminate. What the face mask does is decrease the spread of the virus from droplets, and it really is a sign that shows that you really care about others and not spreading the virus to them if you were, for instance, infected and didn't know it.
And Alan, will the public be allowed to enter city buildings if they do not wish to wear a mask?
No. Under the governor's executive order, individuals are required to wear face coverings in public areas. We will provide face masks for those that need to conduct city business and do not happen to have one on their person. We have taken that into account. But individuals will not be allowed to enter the facility to see other individuals or visit other offices without wearing a face mask.
Okay, this is a different topic. Mayor Price, I saw you have a competition with Hampton's mayor about the census. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the census and your contest?
Sure. We all know that the census is very important to us. For each person that is counted, we receive approximately $2,000 per year over a 10-year period. So if we're undercounted, as we have been 10 years ago, that money is used for us to do the programs that are needed, such as programs for our 501c3 organizations, any program that we can use to help to benefit the community. So it's extremely important. Now, the last time I checked, we were only at about 60-some% of our true count, and we're in competition with Hampton. So if I lose, I've got to send him some oysters. I don't want to do that, y'all. Okay, so Newport News, you need to get out there. Make sure you get your neighbors to help you if you need help to fill out the census. It's not difficult. I think it's 10 questions. It's very easily done. I get to eat crabs if we win, okay? So I'm looking forward to that. I showed him that I already have my hot sauce ready. So it's a friendly competition, but it is extremely important. And you'll see that other cities are doing that as well. I think Atlanta and Houston have a competition between the mayors. So we're trying to make it fun, but we also want to emphasize that it is extremely important. These monies that come in from the federal government, if the count isn't accurate, we don't get the money. And we need that money to do the things that will help our whole community.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Julian, is it safe to plan a summer vacation?
That's a great question. We have had that question come into the health department, and we have a physician there who has done a great deal of research on this, Dr. Bradley Harper. What I would suggest is that you give a call to our hotline, 594-7069, and ask to speak to Dr. Harper about the issue. I think that the bottom line on traveling is you need to maintain all of the social distancing criteria that we have discussed throughout this pandemic. Additionally, the use of face masks, a very important adjunct to keeping you and others safe. Very important to note also that many organizations now have changed how they sanitize hotel rooms, how they make way for the public. And I think you can feel confident as long as you're doing the social distancing and washing your hands frequently that you can travel.
Thank you. Alan, you mentioned it's hurricane season. If a hurricane or a tropical storm comes through, will Newport News be able to open shelters?
Yes, and planning is underway as we talk to finalize a number of options that we have not traditionally had to consider during hurricane season. So we will account for ensuring that everyone has adequate space to social distance, and we will also ensure that we have enough facilities in the event of a significant storm to be able to place individuals, house them, keep them fed, and keep them safe.
Thank you. Mayor Price and/or Cindy, is the city working with Newport News Public Schools to help them plan for next school year? We're receiving quite a few questions about the school year, and how is the city working with the school division?
I'm going to let Cindy answer that.
Okay. Yes, I have been throughout this in contact with the school superintendent, and we've been talking about our various needs. Unfortunately, it's one of those situations, it's a little bit unknown, and maybe a question for Dr. Julian in terms of how they'll be able to do it safely, but we are in in consultation with them. They, of course, have the lead on it, but the lines of communication are open, and we will be available to do anything we can to provide assistance to them to make sure that they can do it safely. And they've actually been of a lot of assistance to us. They had some equipment to help with sanitizing that they allowed us to borrow to be able to sanitize some of our facilities. So the communication is there. I just think there's still some unknowns in terms of how they are going to be able to have that number of students in their schools and do it safely. But I'm very confident that they'll come up with a plan once there's more information, and I believe guidance, which I don't know has come from the governor yet in terms of for the school systems.
Yes, I could add just a little bit to that. In the governor's press conference today, this very matter was discussed, and the statewide superintendent of schools has provided a directive to all school systems to come up with a plan so that they can safely return students back in the fall, both for elementary, high school education, and also for higher education. So I think keep an eye on the governor's press conferences. I believe you'll see guidelines come out in the next few weeks, and I think a mechanism for bringing folks back to school will be obtained to do so safely. I do think there will be a combination of things such as there may still be a fair amount of online classes. I think there may be shifts where students go to school in shifts to try to keep from large congregate settings. And I think you'll see some innovative ways of instruction that are going to be developed. So while it won't quite look like, I think, the past, maybe that's a good thing. You never know what the technology and ideas can bring forward in a situation like this, and maybe it'll even be better educational experience and more fun.
And if I may, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say also in my conversation with the superintendent, he feels that it's probably going to be a mixture, as you stated, Dr. Julian, especially those with disabilities and our younger children. I think we're going to probably try and emphasize one-on-one there, getting them into the facilities, and not punishing those who actually refuse to come back to school under these conditions. They'll have the opportunity to do distant learning as well. So we'll have a mixture of that, but I think we're going to try and come up with a plan that will be as best we can to make sure that our education continues.
And that was very important. I'd just like to add also, that was a very key reason for us to make sure that we did everything that we could for council to fully fund the school's request for next year. They did also receive some COVID-19 funds through the CARES program, so that will help. We've done what we can to support them during this particular end of the school year with, Wi-Fi. Dr. Parker, the school superintendent, had very graciously said, because Alan had mentioned the need for child care, that he would make the schools available where we currently provided programs, so we had more opportunities to provide the social distancing. And what hasn't been mentioned yet, but my understanding is the universities also have been asked to put together a plan. And I did have some contact with President Tribble, and they are working on a plan for CNU to be coming back at some point in the fall as well. So
I can add that that's true. We've been working with the local universities to develop a plan, and I think you'll see a good one in the fall.
Thank you all. And Dr. Julian, speaking of the fall, do you suspect there will be a second wave in the fall or winter?
Well, that's one of the things that we do not know. It's one of the things that everyone is concerned about based on two things. One, the natural history and epidemiology of a viral illness such as this. They often come in phases. The other thing is, of course, we're opening back up our society and we're all getting back out in the public. It speaks to the fact that I would say, number one, we don't know for sure, but it is a concern. But number two, it is why all of the measures that we talk about are so important. Again, washing your hands, social distancing, and also particularly, and I think this is something that could help us in the fall, everyone has done a wonderful job bending the curve, as we talked about a few months ago. And I think congratulations to us all for that. But it's very important, if you are ill, to follow your own medical feelings. If you're not feeling well, take your temperature, see your healthcare provider. communicate that you're not feeling well. And if you're not feeling well, don't go to work, because they're or out in the public any more than you absolutely have to, because that is where the virus will spread. And so those are the things that I would caution us on. We don't know for sure, but it is a concern.
Thank you.
If I may add on to the comments that Dr. Julian just made, and just commend the Virginia Department of Health for really building out the capacity of their website. So, for example, in this important area of testing, there are a number of self-checks that you can follow on the VDH website. In addition to those self-checks, you can also find the nearest testing center to you. And there's also a brand new partnership with CVS Pharmacy for drive-through testing. And if you haven't taken the time to go to the website and just see the depth of resources that are there in one location, I encourage you to do that. You can almost answer any question about data, population impact with regard to COVID-19, or even testing centers, as I just mentioned. So please take the time out to go to the VDH website and look at the variety of resources that are available to everyone on that one site. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that, Alan. That's a really good point. I think one of the things that has occurred over the last 4 or 5 months is the building out of that website and its robustness, vdh.virginia.gov. Very, very helpful and becoming more data quality all the time. And there are a number of resources there available to you.
Thank you. Alan, will the city facilities that host event rentals reopen for these rentals? And if so, will they be limited? Will the size of gatherings be limited, or the percentage of patrons allowed to enter?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I think we will absolutely follow all of the guidance with regard to social gatherings and social distancing. I don't know the final plans that Parks and Recreation may be making with groups or individuals who have contacted them regarding facility rentals, but that would be something that I would encourage individuals to reach out and make contact with that particular department or area that they may have an interest in. And Parks and Recreation just comes to mind because they do have so many different kinds of rentals. So they would be the best source of information to address that question, and we can certainly provide a follow-up to those watching and listening this evening with additional information after the program.
And if I may add, just as a reminder, we have just entered phase 2, and the rules and the regulations and the standards, so to speak, for what happens in phase 3, which we really don't know when that'll come about, but they'll change also. So that may make a difference in the number of people that can participate with a group or the rental of the facilities, those kinds of things. So it really is, it's going in phases, and we're almost taking it day by day, week by week.
And speaking of groups, and we've already spoken about summer vacations, but Dr. Julian, a lot of people host family reunions over the summer. Is that something you recommend they continue this year?
Theoretically, based on the guidelines that we currently have in phase 2 and moving to phase 3, the answer would be yes. However, I'm going to say personally, I would not recommend it. And I want everybody to understand that's my own personal feeling about it, maybe not the VDH's recommendation. But we have too many incidences in the last 5 or 6 months, or 4 or 5 months, in which when we do contact tracing for an index case, we find that there was some sort of congregate social gathering, which was well-intended and something that everyone would want to be part of, but it unintentionally had pretty significant negative consequences for those involved. So I would say at this point in time, maybe this year it would be a good idea to do your reunions virtually. I think that's the safest thing to do. Remember, even as we go through phase 1, 2, and 3, we haven't quit saying it's still safer at home.
All right, I'm going to direct this question to Mayor Price, but anyone can jump in and answer. Do you anticipate this affecting the election in November?
I do think it's going to affect the election. I think what we have to assure the public is that we're going to make it safe for them to vote. I would encourage, that we do voting absentee. I think it proves to be safer. It's convenient. There is very few, if any, cases where anything has gone wrong with absentee voting. We've been doing it for years and years and years. So my recommendation is to avoid the things that you're seeing currently on television, these long lines, people not social distancing, risking themselves, to just apply for your ballot and get it, and go ahead and vote then. But if you do have to vote in person, remember there's also a drop-off. If you don't, for some reason, trust our mail system, you can do the absentee ballot, drive by and drop it off. Or you can stand in that, hopefully, what's going to be a long line, because we want to encourage everyone to vote. But I would encourage everyone to take this opportunity this time to do absentee voting, if at all possible.
I would, I'm sorry. Oh, no. I would second that. I think this is an opportunity to do something simpler, and to all the data that I have seen is their absentee balloting works extremely well, and this is an example of an opportunity to do something very safely and probably more convenient.
And when I just wanted to commend the Registrar's Office and the work they did for this past May election. It was challenging up to the end in terms of knowing whether or not it was going to go forward. City staff worked very hard with the Registrar's Office to provide support to make sure they could do it safely. For those that, for whatever reason, wanted to go out and vote in person or had to because of their circumstances, but a lot of hard work was put into it by the Registrar's Office and the volunteers and city staff to do everything we possibly could to make it as safe as possible. But I certainly echo the comments about voting, absentee if you possibly can.
And I would say, as someone who utilized the absentee ballot process in the most recent round of city council elections, please don't be timid or afraid if you haven't attempted to use the technology, because it really does make the process easy, and it's very self-directed. And so I would encourage anyone to really utilize the absentee ballot process. If you're concerned, if you have health conditions, if for any of the reasons we discussed, if you have any reservations about standing in a line personally to vote, please take advantage of this process. It's easy to use, and the Registrar's Office is happy to help you if you have any questions.
Great information. Thank you all. And Mayor Price and Cindy, how are mayors and city managers and leaders working together throughout the coronavirus pandemic?
You want to go first?
I would say, do you just mean in Newport News or as a region?
As a region, or what have you noticed, what has gone well? How have you really collaborated to fight the coronavirus?
Well, I certainly can tell you from the perspective of the city managers, and I can't say enough about how well, as a group, the region and the city managers have gotten together, and the county administrators, and having it started out initially with just general conversations, and then it got organized. So the city manager of Hampton, is pretty much the chairperson of our informal group in conjunction with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission providing some support to us. We were having weekly meetings 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, submitting questions. It was as simple as, what are you doing about this? What are you seeing with this? Engaging, if we had any questions, with the health department, talking to them. They were extremely supportive of talking us down sometimes, and it wasn't just the CAOs. Alan can certainly speak to a group that was having regular conversations at the more operational level. We have continued those conversations, we had gone from pretty much having a monthly meeting that rotated through from all the cities and the counties in the region to now we are doing it by telephone, and we are having them Wednesdays and Fridays right now. But it's an open process. Anyone can submit on the agenda or just start bringing up issues. What are you saying about this? What are you doing? And as much as we can, work in conjunction and coordination with each other, because most of our citizens have the same needs, and there seems to be, it really helps if we're a little bit consistent. Now, every city has different needs also, and people have to take the best approach for their community. But we have, at least from my perspective, it has been very beneficial to hear some of the challenges and some of the successes of what the other communities are doing, and take some of their best practices. We didn't think of doing that, and the same thing with Newport News. So there's been a lot of cooperation and communications at the city manager and staff level.
And in addition to locally and regionally with the mayors, because of my current position as president of the African American Mayors Association, I've had the opportunity to talk to mayors all across the country, and been stealing some things from them and giving some advice in some areas. For instance, I've been bragging about, we have a large employer here in Newport News that has had very few cases, and the way they have handled that, I think, has been very good. So we've talked about that and the things that we've been doing there to let them know, hey, if you have a large industry, you want to know what they're doing, we give them information on how to contact our shipyard. Talking to mayors about some of the things that we may not have thought about, and being able to share, as Cindy said, the best practices that they're doing in their cities. So it's been very good learning experience, and everybody, that's the one thing we assure each other, is that everybody's going through the same thing. So it's comforting to be able to relate and talk to people who are experiencing the same things you are.
And we already did have good relationships, but they've gotten even better at the regional level.
Yep.
I'm also involved in a peer group of assistants and deputies from the 5 largest urban cities here in Hampton Roads, and we have a virtual meeting every 2 weeks. So when Cindy's group of the chief administrative officials occasionally take on something, we find ourselves discussing some of those same topics on an operational level. But there's plenty of communication and information flow, and those best practices are really great to focus on, because we find that every now and then one locality will jump out in front of another with something new that we haven't thought about. And it's so helpful to have that exchange and that opportunity available to piggyback on those ideas. So we really do, I think, at all levels, try to learn from each other and adapt as much as we can.
And what's really going to be important when we get a little further through this is when we all sit down and start having those conversations about lessons learned.
This is Matt Strickler.
Yeah, I'd add one last comment, perhaps, from the perspective of the health department. It was incredibly gratifying to see how well the fire, EMS, and the police organizations in the jurisdictions of Hampton, Newport News, up to James City County, Williamsburg, et cetera, York County, everybody, James City County. Everybody came together. And actually an emergency operations center around COVID-19 was established by all the jurisdictions. And I had a number of the officials tell me that if it was a really good experience and actually has them better prepared for other emergencies that we may face, such as hurricanes, et cetera, in the future. If there is a silver lining to a situation like we've been through, it's that I think we all learn that we're a whole lot stronger together and better together than we are apart or distant or being at each other. And I think it's really been a gratifying experience to see that.
Thank you all. Now, Dr. Julian, we are receiving questions about masks, and I know you can't answer this specifically, but how long do you think everyone is going to need to wear masks? And people are saying, have there been instances, is it possible to get sick if you wear a mask too long?
So a couple of things that I would say. So I think we're going to be wearing masks for a while. I think until we see what happens in the fall. Are we going to see a recurrence of the the virus. I think we're going to need to see how well we all socially distance and follow the guidelines that we've all talked about. Masking is a big help on that. I think the CDC, unintentionally at the beginning of all this, probably did not have the best advice. You may recall that the original advice out of the CDC was not, or the guidance was not, to use face masks. I think that was probably not the best guidance, and I think we know better now. So having said that, I think we're going to be using them for a while. Now, in terms of masks, a couple of things. So one, a cloth face mask is certainly better than nothing, and it's a good thing to use. Surgical masks are now becoming more available, and we certainly want surgical masks and, of course, N95 masks to be preserved for our healthcare personnel. However, as they become more available and more being manufactured, I think there's nothing wrong with using a surgical mask in the future. The other thing I'll say is if you're using a cloth face mask or a surgical mask, whatever it is you're using, that thing needs to be cleaned daily. So you need to have 2 or 3. I don't know how it was for you, but my mother always had clean underwear for us each day. And so I'm not being facetious, but what I'm trying to make the point that you don't wear the mask for a week and then wash it. This is something that you need to wash every day after you've used it and have a fresh one in place. The other thing is when they become wet internally, that is when they definitely need to be changed. So sometimes you need to do that maybe once or twice a day. So think of it that way. It is one of those things where we kind of have to use some practical advice on it. I'm not aware of any data that shows that wearing the mask is more likely to make the individual more sick or more susceptible to anything disease-wise. So I would not worry about that aspect of it as long as you're keeping it dry, clean, and changing it periodically.
Thank you. And this is the last question. I'm going to direct it to Dr. Julian, and then I'm going to give each of our panelists the chance to provide closing remarks. But Dr. Julian, is it true that sunlight kills the virus? And if so, is it safe to be in groups outdoors?
So that's a really good question. So we know that UV light kills many viruses, including this one. And there are a number of studies going on right now with the use of ultraviolet sterilization processes. The second thing that we know is that this virus spreads less readily in open environments. Being in closed rooms and in close proximity in closed rooms seems to be a very good way to spread the virus. If people are outside in the open air, it seems to be less contagious, less likely to spread between people. So I think I'll give you a for instance. So as we go back to religious services, I've had a number of conversations with folks in the area, and what I have recommended is outside events. These are probably safer than inside events, even with social distancing inside. It certainly appears to be the case at this time. So, I think I would recommend those things, but please use common sense. Please remember the physical distancing. Please wear your face mask.
Thank you, Dr. Julian. Cindy, would you like to begin the closing remarks?
Sure. Just briefly, just a quick reminder and recap, though you've heard it several times. We will be, after 3 months, reopening city buildings and facilities to the public. We are going to do it safely, not only for our citizens, for our employees. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we're still providing the services that the citizens need in a safe fashion. And I can't say it enough. I have to continuously commend the staff across the board, all of our employees, how hard they've worked through this process, through this pandemic crisis, whatever we want to call it. And it does take a toll. I said it's been a long several months, and we've had a lot of people, our employees out there on the front lines day to day, and I can't say thank you enough to all of our employees for all their hard work. I have to give a special thank you to Alan Archer, the assistant manager that's here with us today. He has taken the lead on this recovery and planning and pulled together the department directors and some other staff to work very hard. While it seems like easy to say we're reopening on June 16th, but a lot of work went back into just being able to open those doors safely. So again, I can't commend staff enough. And lastly, I want to commend the citizens. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. They've been very understanding when we have had questions or concerns. As soon as you explain to them what is going on, they have been very receptive, because sometimes it's not as easy to get out and address some of those complaints that we have been in the past. We try, but sometimes it's a skeleton crew. But I think, as I said, staff's done a great job, and I think that the citizens have been very supportive of those efforts, and I thank them. And hopefully, not hopefully, I know we're going to get through this process. Unfortunately, we don't know how long it's going to be, but we're going to get there. We're in phase 2, and, just we're going day to day. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to communicate like this with the citizens.
Dr. Julian, would you like to go?
I think I would like to say how pleased I am with how things have gone under the circumstances, and it's due to the cooperation of the citizens, governmental leaders, healthcare leaders. We never overwhelmed our system of healthcare. We were able to bend the epidemiologic curve downward, and it's just been gratifying to see the results. It's been gratifying to see how well people have worked together. I think we will defeat this virus ultimately. I don't know exactly how much longer it's going to take, but I have every confidence that working together, we will prevail. I do want to thank everyone that in city and county government, all of the fire, EMS, all the healthcare providers in the region, the hospital systems, and all of the doctors, nurses, and physicians for being brave, for being heroes in this pandemic. We owe a great debt of gratitude to them. And I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity I've had to be part of our response to this. And you're in very good hands going forth in the future. Dr. Dwamina, who will be the health director, is going to do a great job, is well educated, well trained, and is very eager to provide services to the community. Thank you.
I've often thought about my experience with COVID-19 and other emergency events, unfortunately, that I have been involved with over my local government career. And as I've said before, this one by far has really stretched me and other professionals who are really put in the position of being responsive to all the needs of our community. It has been a struggle and a fight. This invisible enemy, unlike other events such as tornadoes or hurricanes or down power lines, is not apparent visibly, but it reminds us every single day when we look at the data and reminded about how dangerous this pandemic is. And if I've learned anything, particularly based on my experiences here in Newport News, it's the fact that this community has been patient, has been tolerant, and willing to take guidance, actively sought guidance. And for that, it has made all of our jobs easier, to some extent more enjoyable, and we hope that we've been able to live up to your expectations in terms of keeping you and your family safe. We will continue to do this until COVID-19 is no longer a threat to our community. Thank you.
I would like to just, again, thank the citizens for doing what we have asked you to do, it, and as been stated, seeking guidance. We're giving you the best information we have that's available. A couple of things I just want to reemphasize. Those of you who are out and are protesting, I think in talking to the police chief, he would like to know if you're planning an event so that he can have a presence there to protect you, especially if we're going to be crossing streets. We're not discouraging protests, but we just want to be aware of them so that we can protect the public and make sure that that goes on safely. Secondly, I want to talk again about the census. I'm looking forward to eating crab. Hopefully, please, Newport News, fill out those census forms and send them in. and we want to make sure that everybody, again, plans for a safe voting process. And I want to talk about what you said as far as family reunions. You know, it's hard enough now not to shake hands with people that it's going to be almost impossible to not do it with family. So I want to just reiterate what you said about family reunions. This may be the year to have a good Zoom family reunion as opposed to in person. So, and I just want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening and for asking such great questions. If your questions didn't get answered, or if you have additional questions, please call our 311 Center at 933-2311, Monday through Friday. You know, we've been through a lot together this year. Please know that your city council and city leadership are working together with a wide array of partners to make Newport News a better place for all. So please take care of yourselves, look out for one another, stay safe, and be kind to each other. Please have a good night. Thank you.